Okay, Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Mike Willis. We've got the first Team USA Tuesday of 2021. I'm joined by Matt Lindland, the head coach of the National Greco-Roman program. Matt, happy 2021. Happy New Year. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm blessed and feeling good, refreshed. Got out to Oregon to visit my kids for Christmas and spent a few days at the cabin and back in Colorado, ready to roll, man. We got a camp coming up and just less than a week away. So just things are starting to rock, man. It feels good to get busy again, and busy doing the things you love to do, which is, getting a chance to work with the athletes on the mat and get away from the Zoom calls. It's just Zoom meeting and spreadsheets and emails and actually connect with people. I mean, we were created to be social creatures, and it's not good to be alone. And I think, there was a lot of you know, just propaganda saying, get away, stay away from people, and lock yourself down. And I don't think that's healthy. I think it's really good and wise to spend time with loved ones and other people. And that's what I'm looking forward to in 2021 is working directly with athletes on the mats and helping them achieve their goals.
Yeah, hopefully we're starting to round the corner and come to the end of the lockdowns, and there's some really good stuff going on with vaccinations. So fingers crossed that it's full steam ahead, and life as we know it kind of gets back to normal. And wrestling's been plodding away this whole time, operating safely and within local guidelines, but doing our best to get our athletes out there and getting some camps together. And I know, the Greco program has been successful holding camps right along in, safe and enclosed conditions. Had a couple, I think, were your last two in Nebraska and South Dakota, I think?
Yes, that was in December. We had two in South Dakota. You're right. I mean, our leader always says the dawn is coming, and I can see the crack of dawn right now. And I love that phrase because the day has a timetable, the morning, the evening, and we have seasons in life as well. And we did do a good job of, as soon as we got the go ahead as far as, hey, follow local and state guidelines, we started going to states that were wide open, and governors that respected individual freedoms. And so we're back in South Dakota because they have pretty relaxed regulations. They trust their citizens to do the right thing. And, we all are aware that, this virus is real and it's can be dangerous to people, but we're also learning a lot more about it and learning that, young, healthy athletes are, not spreaders. They're not getting, sick, but we still want to be careful. We still want to follow the regulations, and just so we're in compliance and doing the right things. But within those regulations, I think there's opportunities to look for windows to get out and train and get your athletes. I mean, we were in Utah this summer. We were in Oklahoma. We were in South Dakota. Those kind of states kind of coordinate with liberties and freedoms for individuals, and I'm all about that.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure that the more that you host these camps and these training opportunities, the more you kind of get down the formula and how you do it and the logistics and following the letter of the law and all of that stuff. So I'm sure as you progressed and the more camps you had, the easier it kind of became to run these opportunities.
Yeah, regulations start to relax a little more, and there's a little less logistics you have to take care of, and then you can focus on the training plans more and really get on the mats and get to work and get the things done that need to be done to move our program forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Matt, I got a list of questions in front of me. You ready to hop into them?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, let's do it. So starting off, going to start you off easy, but favorite movie?
The Man from Snowy River.
I've never seen that one.
Well, it is a must see. The action scenes in that movie, when I watched those action scenes, I was like, I want to do that. It's a bunch of horseback action scenes, and I was an equestrian athlete before I was a wrestler. And I've also done some stunt work. So I'd still love to do stunt work on a horse. I've never actually got to do that. I've done some driving, I've done some fight scenes, but never actually got to do any stunt work off a horse. And there's not a ton of westerns anymore, but this is a classic movie. And there's also The Return from Snowy River, which is worth watching, but it's not the best. And if I had to go with a comedy, I would say American Beauty, which most people would claim that is not a comedy,
I
but
was
it
thinking it was
is
a little weird choice.
it's absolutely hilarious. If you watch it and look at it as a comedy, you're gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. This is hilarious." But it's I think it's portrayed as a little more dramatic of a movie, but definitely The Man from Snowy River is number one.
All right, that's going on my list, my to watch list for sure. Next question: who is your favorite musical artist or band?
Well, it's Social D, Social Distortion, Mike Ness, and I am able to separate the artist from the art in any genre in sports and fighting. I don't have to love the artist to really appreciate his art. And I got a friend of mine, Jackson Taylor, who's probably a little more independent player. And if anybody's out there looking for really, really good mixed of kind of punk and actually country music, kind of like Aaron Lewis, when he was with Stain, and then he went out on his own. I love that mix of, really telling a story, but having that crazy rhythm and beats, that punk has with it, So I definitely would go with Social Distortion.
Gotcha. What is your favorite food? And then also, what was your favorite food when you were a wrestler, kind of cutting weight?
Okay, good questions. Well, seafood. I'm a Pacific Northwest dude. Grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I got a cabin down at the coast. The first thing we did when we got back from the Pan American qualifier was we headed out to our cabin at the coast, started digging razor clams. Then I got some crabs out in the mouth of the ocean there, and then salmon. And so we feasted. And my son came out for Christmas, and it was like, "What do you want to eat?" And he's like, "Oysters, Dungeness crab." So definitely seafood. When I get done making weight, typically it was sushi, which usually has the rice with it and some seafood. But I definitely wanted some carbs as well. So I would usually go with some sushi. I know it's weird because you're like, man, sushi's a little scary, on the stomach. But traveling all over the world, I've been able to hold up. I kind of an iron gut guy. Go over to, you know, Azerbaijan. I'm eating, lamb livers and or whatever organs are being grilled up on, a little shashlik out on the grill with the boys. So, but yeah, I think typically after a weigh-in would be sushi, if that was the option.
Yeah. Did you have like a roll of choice or like a go-to roll?
Yeah, a pretty safe one is usually your spicy tuna and a little nagori salmon but yeah, it's a pretty safe one. Just stick with a little spicy tuna roll.
So I have not developed that iron gut yet. And my only international trip was at the World Championships in Kazakhstan, and I decided to be a little adventurous and try a little horse. And bad idea, and I was sick for the next 3 days. But do you have any tips to developing that iron stomach, or is that just inherent?
I don't know, but I mean, I've ever eaten the horse too because it's their national dish. I mean, they love it, and this one was boiled and baked horse meat. I'm not a huge fan of the horse meat either, to tell you the truth. A little oily, a little tough. Well, I'm also not a fan of like grass-fed beef. When I raise my beef, I always like to finish with corn, so it puts a little fat and some flavor in there, getting that good fats into your body. Man, I just try it, sample everything when you're overseas, and and that's what I did. It's like I want to, when I go to another country, I want to mesh myself in the cultures. Like, I'm so excited about Tokyo because Japanese culture is like literally my favorite culture. Like everything about their culture, the way they treat people, how hospitality they are, how likable the Japanese are, and this is generally speaking. I'm sure there's, jerks in every culture, but generally speaking, I mean, the Japanese culture is great, and their food. I mean, they go from sushi to noodles to, they have all these different genres of food, and Kobe beef and stuff like that. But whenever you're in a country, just sample whatever their dish is, even if it's the horse meat in Kazakhstan and that's their national dish. Give it a try. Jiga, if you're overseas, is one of my favorite, and that's the little baby lamb livers that are soaked in salt, and then they grill them over the coals, the wood coals. Love it. I mean, what's that? I love borscht and I mean, just anything overseas that you can't get here authentically. I love.
What was the wildest dish that you've had?
The wildest dish is that Jello mold that they put little fish fins and eyeballs in. Like they take every part of the fish that you don't serve to the your guests. I think this is the stuff you're like trimming out, and then they just put it in a Jello mold. I'm telling you, that stuff's pretty bad, and I've had that. But I mean, how about in Uzbekistan? Well, you're in Kazakhstan, but you didn't get over to Uzbekistan in 14, which is the plov. The rice dish and that big bowl. Love that. I like to eat. And over this break, got to do a lot of cooking out of the cabin. I got a little Traeger grill out there, and for Christmas, my family bought me, which means I get to cook for them. One of those new Blackstone flat top griddles. We did a lot of food on the griddle and the Traeger grill. So I got a nice covered porch. It rains a lot in the Pacific Northwest, but it's not real cold. So you get out and throw a coat on, walk out on your porch, and fire up the Traeger and fire up the Blackstone griddle and just start cooking away. It's fun.
Yeah, so I'm guessing everybody eats pretty good when they come to the cabin then.
That is something I learned from my mother was, when people come over, just serve them well, serve them, and, that's kind of how we show love in our family is like, feed me well. I know you love me. And that's, like I said, my son James is coming out, and it's like, what do you want? We want to cook whatever you want. And some of the stuff we didn't even cook. We just cracked them open, those raw oysters on the half shell. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, the oysters are like my favorite. So you talking about them is making me jealous. Because that's what we can get around here in the Philadelphia area is I go down to the Italian market and they've got some really good live seafood places, but it's not the same as scooping them out of the water yourself. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was fun digging those clams too.
Yeah.
These are big raisin clams. You ever had those?
No, I've had like steamers, but I don't think I've had
I
big.
love a good bucket of steamers too, but these razor clams are out of this world. It's kind of like an abalone. You ever had abalone?
No.
Oh,
But
uh,
another thing
and you know
that
what
man from
I love
Snowy
the fact
River,
that,
abalone.
I love the fact though is that going out and harvesting this food, like digging the clams. I mean, I've had abalone, in the northern coast of California where I literally got to go dive for 'em. I was up there staying with a friend had a cabin up there. He invited me out there and right in Sonoma, this beautiful place, and you can see the ocean, but it takes about an hour and a half to get there, even though you can see it. You're like, we're up on this hill, and you're like, I want to go to the ocean, and one of his caretakers for his property said, "Oh, I'll take you out diving," and I had that opportunity to go dive for abalones, and it was so ironic because about 3 years later, I was in Vegas watching a fight, the UFC, and these dudes came up and they were like, "Hey, Lindland, how are you? We enjoy your fights and blah blah blah." And then the one guy was like, "Was that you ab diving?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Dude, the conditions were crazy. We didn't go out that day because it was too dangerous." Well, I didn't know better. It was just my first time, so I was like, "Must be normal." But it was a little sketchy. But the fact that you can go out and dive for abalones and fish for salmon and trap your crab and you know digging for the clams. I mean, I love being able to harvest your own food and then really makes you appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah, earning it definitely would make it taste a little better. I think it's got to. Um, so I know obviously you competed extensively in MMA. Is that your favorite sport to watch other than wrestling, or do you have another sport?
I really love watching Greco-Roman wrestling. I don't watch a lot of sports that are mainstream, to tell you the truth. I don't do football. I don't do basketball. Unless it's a live event and it becomes more of a social outing rather than going to watch the game. I mean, I've lived a very blessed life, and when I go watch baseball, it's like, I know one of the players, and so he hooks me up with some, seats into the, what do they call it, the dugout club, where you're gorging on food before you go out, or at the Rose Garden. I knew the people that worked at the Rose Garden, and Maurice Smith used to be, I'm sorry, Maurice Lucas used to be one of the coaches there for the Portland Trail Blazers. He was a friend of mine before he passed, and I could walk in the back door, go sit on the bench next to the team. So I enjoyed that. Turning on a television and wasting 3 hours, not my favorite thing. I would say favorite sport, if you had to nail me down, it would be boxing. It would honestly be boxing. I grew up watching boxing with my mother. That was something we did together, and it started because of the Olympics. We started watching the Olympics together, and then I remember in '84, I watched some American wrestlers, start to do really good. Guys like Dave Schultz, and I was starting to, look at combat sports differently. And when I got into high school, I started wrestling, and yeah, and then later on, I learned to box a little and learned some jiu-jitsu, and really put that together with MMA. But if I had to pick, it would be boxing minus all the politics.
Gotcha. Who's your favorite boxer of all time?
Oh man, right now, Bud's the freaking man. But I mean, Tyson. I mean, all time. My mom's favorite was Sugar Ray Leonard, and in art class, I made her a bust of Sugar Ray Leonard. uh, but
Was it
I
good?
mean, for me, it was probably Tyson. But I mean, Crawford right now is. I mean, right now, Bud Crawford. I mean, no doubt, Terrence is the man. Um, but I'd say all time, I mean, Tyson. And again, I can separate the art from the artist. I'm not a huge fan of Tyson, but man, that dude could box. And he was just violent. And I mean, it was really fun to watch him in his prime just go out and destroy guys. And that was right when I was in college, my freshman year through my, senior year of college was kind of his heyday, and again, it was getting together with the boys, buying a pay-per-view, and making it more of a social event than just watching the sport.
Yeah. So this question might be a little tougher, but what about your favorite wrestler to watch?
Man, I mean, there- that's tough. I mean, that's tough because I mean, there's so many great wrestlers. I guess if we'd have to go back historically, I'd say Iskandarian was one of my favorites to watch. The other one was probably Filberto Esqui, who I competed against and ultimately drove down a weight class in 2000. I beat him at the Pan Am Games in '99, and he ended up winning his second Olympic medal at the weight below me. But Iskandarian, usually guys around my weight class that I could really appreciate. Josef Trotz from Poland, but I'd have to go back a ways to say favorite. I mean, there's the guys right now. I mean, the level of wrestling now is just evolved and gotten so much better, and I'm in awe of what these guys have created, the art that they create in this sport nowadays. I mean, you saw. I mean, Escudero was the first guy that did these side lifts ever. Nobody was doing side lifts. Now, I mean, you got all the top guys are lifting side lifts instead of split lifts, and but anybody that creates really, dynamic, exciting holds and throws, I'm a fan of.
Yeah. So you're a bit of a renaissance man. You've already like touched on it a little bit, but I know you've got some more. But what are your hobbies away from the mat?
Well, I've had many throughout my life, to tell you the truth. I was very, very involved in equestrian sports. I love that. When I was getting to the end of my MMA career, I sponsored a rafting team at my gym. I'd give them the facility to train at and prepare for season. And I didn't realize, what exactly these guys done, because I've done a lot of rafting, class 3, taking people down trips. I even guided one summer right out of high school. Right after my senior year, I was guiding people down the Deschutes. But again, class 3, splash and giggle, fun stuff. And then these guys, I found out, they were world class whitewater organization, right? That trained at my gym, and they asked me to come out and watch one of their events. And then they said, "Hey, we got an extra dry suit, and you want to jump in and take a practice lap with me?" And I was hooked. I was literally hooked. We went down the Wind River, class 5 section of whitewater, really high water that year. And next weekend, I was racing down in Southern Oregon on the Klamath River, and won that race. Had zero technique. Zero technique. What do they call these ones on your neck that I lock scalings? I locked my scalings up so bad I had to get lidocaine injected into them because I was just digging. I was just like, I'm getting after it. And then I learned, oh my gosh, I've been developing this sport for my entire life because it's all core. It's all core strength. And in wrestling, everything is lock and twist, gut wrench and defense. And I realized I was really trained for this sport my entire life. And then I started competing in whitewater racing and was on national team for 5 of those years. The top 3 in the nation, top 2 one year. Never beat these guys from Colorado. And when I moved out here to Colorado, I've had opportunities to train with them and help them prepare for the world championships. They've asked me to, come up to Buena Vista and pace them on Pine Creek section and the Numbers section, which are really solid, Pine Creek's a class 5 section. Numbers is really beautiful class 4 section, but it's a tough run. There's a lot of great whitewater here in Colorado. Unfortunately, the season's really short, and it's also right in the middle of our season. As soon as the snow melts, when's that? Springtime. When do nationals start? When do we start getting busy? And then the water runs out here in Colorado because everything is rock. There's no saturation of the earth. In the Pacific Northwest, the earth is like you're walking on a sponge, and water's just seeping into the streams year round. So you run different creeks and streams all year round. But you still get the high water in the springtime as well, because you got a lot of mountains out there. You got the Cascades, the coastal mountain ranges, and everything seeping into the rivers. But so whitewater, particularly whitewater, but when I moved out here, Coach Sam Barber is an outstanding paddler. I mean, he's very humble about it too, but he's really, really good. And I got a chance to start kayaking with Sam and learned a lot from him. I've got a world-class coach back in Oregon that I train with. And now I'm getting into stand-up paddleboarding as well, and I'm running whitewater on those. And so
I didn't even know that you could run whitewater on those. I feel like I've only seen that on I guess I've seen it on the ocean, but usually it's like a tranquil lake with no waves or no currents or anything. So you're telling me you stand on a paddle?
Boring.
Crazy.
And that's what my wife wants me to. She's like, "Can't we do something we can do together? Look at these paddle boards. We can get out on the lake." And about 3-4 trips out the lake, I'm like, I need some running water. I need some rapids. And you can start doing skill building because the skills translate. It's kind of like saying wrestling's wrestling, freestyle, Greco, folk style. There's a lot of transferable skills, and understanding how to read water and pulling eddies and ripping out of eddies and stuff, and running big rapids. The principles are the same, but the smaller the boat, the bigger the rapid. And when you're on a little stand-up paddleboard, those class 3 rapids are actually very challenging. So I don't need to run class 5. I certainly don't want to run class 5 on a stand-up paddleboard, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love whitewater. I love fishing whitewater. I've never hunted just because there was always a fishing season right in the middle of hunting season. So, people always say, "Oh, you love the outdoors." Yeah, I do. I love to eat meat. So, I mean, those two things go well together. I just have never had the time or the knowledge to get out and do some hunting. Although, my cabin, I mean, there is from my door cam ring, I can see the elk walking in front of my house every morning. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something cool to wake up to and look at and see. Most people don't see an elk, period, let alone in their front yard. So
Yeah. And then reading, I mean, I've got a lot of great hobbies. I mean, I love to study and read and philosophy and I'm, I was called the law when I was fighting, and that was because of a court case. But I mean, I love constitutional law and studying. I just read Ted Cruz's book. It was a lot about some big Supreme Court cases, and so studying and running whitewater and and catching big salmon. Those are kind of my favorite hobbies.
yeah. You can be funny or you can be serious with this answer, but what is your biggest fear?
Well, that's funny because we were playing a game where we had to write that down over Christmas, and my wife said mine were two more, but I said wife leave and loss of a child. I mean, those are probably my only two fears, honestly. Um, I mean, I think fear is healthy, but every time you have a fear, it's like I feel like you should lean into it. It's like almost when I have something that like intimidates or frightens me at all, it's like, man, I got to do this, whatever that is. I mean, that is kind of my philosophy is be bold, be courageous, and inspire others. I mean, that is my lifelong philosophy is be bold and be courageous. I mean, that means no matter what the fear is, and we all have fear, and no matter what that fear is, you just got to lean into it and do it, and sometimes you got to train, you got to prepare, you got to plan before you do it. And there's other things that is like jumping off a high cliff into some deep water. It's like, man, that's scary. Send it. So, I mean, you don't have to prepare and plan for that other than make sure there's no rocks that you're going to land on. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things out there that scare the heck out of me. And that to me, that means I want to do it. I want to get out and try that. I want to experience. I want to live that. I want to live my life to the fullest. And I don't have a lot of fears. And so this was a really tough year. It was 2021 when I'm hearing this talk of fear, and be afraid and protect yourself. It's like, okay, we got to be smart. I'm going to wash my hands. I do that anyways, and I don't want to be around people that are sick. So I'm going to protect myself in that manner, but I'm not going to live my life in fear. I mean, I think, I am a Christian, and one of the things the Bible says to me is, and it's one of the things that God speaks most of. He says, do not fear. And then he usually ends that with something, be bold, be courageous. He has something after it. But one of the most common things that the Lord spoke to us was, do not fear in the Lord only. And so I think that was a long answer, but yeah, I mean, I honestly just, the death of a child or your spouse, I think would be the most fearful thing.
Yeah. So you said that you kind of, but besides like obviously things like that, most of your fears you try to, run to and kind of embrace and take on, does that help you conquer that fear? Or like next time you're jumping off a tall rock, are you still feeling nervous? I guess, does embracing your fears, get you over them, or is the fear still there and you're just, better equipped to manage it because you know what it is?
I think that is the exact response. I think the fear is still there. I mean, it may be less than, it's like, okay, I've accomplished this. I've done this before. I know what this is like. But I mean, every time I get in that kayak and slide in that thing, and you're locked in. You pull that skirt over the top of it. You're going to be upside down in 10 minutes. As soon as you hit the big rapid, and you don't hit a high brace and keep yourself upright, you could be upside down, and your face could be scraping off rocks in the bottom of the river. But knowing that fear, you know how to prepare for it, and you plan for it, and you're better equipped to handle that kind of fear. And I think it makes you stronger and more resilient down the road. You can apply those lessons to other areas of your life, not just whitewater. Well, I'm going to do some other, risky activity. I'm going to learn those. I'm going to take those lessons that I learned from whitewater, or from, jumping over fences with horses, or whatever that scary thing is that you're going to take yourself into. I think you learn how to handle that fear and cope with it and overcome it a lot better. And I just think it makes life more fulfilling and rewarding overall.
Yeah. Speaking of fulfilling and rewarding, what is your favorite aspect of your job and of leading, the Greco-Roman program in this country?
Okay, you cut out just a little bit, Mike. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Our internet
okay.
cut out. Favorite part of my job?
Yep. Yep.
Mentoring guys, and getting the chance to just share philosophy with them about the type of stuff we're even talking about right now, or faith-based principles, or just how to live your life, how to overcome those fears, how to succeed in spite of being afraid to accomplish something. I mean, people even are afraid of winning. I mean, that's a real fear. Like it. And it's like, man, we got to figure out how to get over that, or they're afraid of losing and they don't perform up to their abilities even. And I think asking the question about fear and then going right into this question, I think that is one of my favorite things to do is help athletes overcome fears, and whether it's the fear of winning, the fear of failing, or looking like a fool out there on the mat. I mean, those are things that hurt your ego, but they don't hurt you physically, and but maybe more emotionally. And emotions are real. I mean, everybody has that sense of they want to be successful, and they don't want to look bad in front of thousands of fans, especially like at the Olympic Games. But when you worry about those type of things that you cannot control, you're not focused on the things that you can control, that which will lead you to the successful path that you're trying to achieve. So just being around my athletes and working one-on-one, and that's why 2020 was such a tough year. We got off to such a wonderful start up at the Pan Am Championships, and at the Pan Am qualifier up in Canada, and then for almost a year now we've been separated from our athletes, despite a few camps here. And as staff, we weren't even allowed to travel up until this last camp in December. So I was coordinating this stuff on Zoom calls, and you're not making those connections, those human connections as much. I mean, it helps, no question, but it's nice to be able to get on the mats with your athletes and work with them. And I mean, I love the technical aspect of our sport, and just trying to guide guys to learn those technical aspects as well, and how they can improve. So working one-on-one with individual athletes and helping them grow and improve on and off the mat would be where I get my most enjoyment.
So I want to run it back a little bit to something you said there. The fear of winning. I'm not sure that most people, like, I think everyone can kind of understand the fear of losing. The fear of winning, what exactly is that? And, how do you see that manifest itself?
Well, I think your expectations are going to be higher now, or everyone else's expectations are going to be higher. I mean, not just yourself. You're like, okay, now I know what I'm capable of. Now that's a little scary, because now I got to put in more time, more effort to get to that next level. And I think also the fact that other people that are, coaches or spectators, fans, um, are looking at now we all know what I'm capable of doing. Now I've got higher expectations on me. I think that's a fear for a lot of guys. And whatever it is, losing or winning or getting hurt or man, I don't want to do that technique because here's all the 20 things that could go wrong. I could land on my head and give myself a concussion. I could, my coach Pavel Katzen, who was my first coach in Greco-Roman, who was the 1984 Olympic coach, used to say terrible keys. When you would throw a guy and your faces would land together, literally that's a concussion. Now I've learned that over years, but Pavel used to just call that a terrible keys. But he would have these practices where it didn't matter if you were afraid. You were doing it, because he's yelling, throw, Tiger, throw, pop your heaps. And you're just like, and so you learn to just kind of like, okay, man, I'm afraid to do this. And I was a freshman in high school and I've never wrestled ever. And I'm in there working out with guys that have made world and Olympic teams, and I'm supposed to body lock with them, whistle blows. Who do you think is getting thrown the most? I learned to land real well a long time before I learned to throw guys very well. So
what was what was it like then? Because I can't imagine, walking onto the mat as a wrestler, first year wrestler and being like, all right, I'm in a room with some of the top guys, in the country. Could you give a little context to that and actually?
Yeah, I definitely, I gym class in my freshman year of high school, and all freshmen are required to take gym class, and wrestling was part of that gym class. And somehow they convinced me that, hey, you got some talent, man. You got potential there. You should come out for our team. So that was the part where I got on the team. And as a 98-pound freshman and being bullied throughout, I wore pearl snaps and hanker scarves. So I was getting bullied. Like, there's no question I was getting bullied. And I was like, man, this might help me, when these guys are bullying me, I could learn how to defend myself. So that's why I started wrestling. Then I fell in love with the sport in high school. And I went to the state tournament for freestyle and Greco-Roman. I entered cadets, I entered juniors, and I ended up going 0-8 in one weekend. And that was an eye opener for me. I was like, man, I got to figure out where the best guys are training and start training with those guys. And that's kind of how my mind works. So, when I was first learning how to kayak, it was like, I am having out of boat experiences 12 times on a run. This run 6 miles and I'm out of my boat, draining my boat and getting back in. I'm like, I need a coach. I need to get around better training partners. I need better environment to prepare. And so I went to one of the two clubs in Portland. There was really two great clubs. I was looking at, the guys on the podium. They were either coming from Roy Pittman's club, which was the Pit, Peninsula Wrestling Club, which is in North Portland over Peninsula Park in North Portland, or you can go over to Southeast Portland, the Cobra Wrestling Club, USA, Oregon. And literally I would have had to get on one more bus. I had to transfer twice. It took me 3 buses to get from a high school as a freshman to the USA, Oregon Athletic Club. I would have to take one more bus to get over to Peninsula Park. So that kind of started me down going to the USA, Oregon. And then by my junior year, when I was driving, I was driving as a sophomore, but by my junior year, I was driving and I was doing both clubs. I was only another 15, 20 minutes away, in my car to get to those clubs. So I just started training everywhere, training with everybody and trying to get around the best guys. But literally when I showed up at that club, there was a guy that just got done coaching the Olympic team in the year before. Anthony Amato was there, Mark Fuller was there, Dan Mello. And for the guys that are looking, historically, these guys were on world Olympic teams and, making some of the best teams. And I'm getting an opportunity to train with these guys. So I made a great decision to overcome that fear of walking into that wrestling room where everybody in there could whoop me very easily. And I still have friendships. I mean, one of my teammates, his son's wrestling for me now. And I've got guys that were on my teams that, and even them, they bullied me. I was a mark. Pearl snaps and a hanker scarf. I mean, you're looking to get beat up. I mean, you're asking for it. But yeah, I mean, and I mean, I got the swirly, I got the hot foot, and the toothpaste in the ears. I mean, whatever the bullying tactics were, I went through it, and I think all those things, make you a little stronger, learn how to overcome those situations.
What do you think the best advice you've received in your career has been, or a piece of advice that really just kind of sticks out to you?
You know, I've had so many great mentors and coaches throughout my career. I mean, I can't even tell you how many guys I have, but I think the most important lesson to learn is, enjoy what you're doing. And if you don't love it, I mean, this sport is really too hard. Wrestling at the highest level. I mean, as a kid and a youth, I mean, it should be required for every young man. And now we got women's wrestling, and I think my daughter's done martial arts her whole life, and it builds so much confidence for young ladies as well. But I truly believe for men, combat sports of some kind should be required at a certain age. But if you don't love it at the elite level, the world class level, I mean, get out. I mean, there's so many other career opportunities to make more money. But if it's what you're passionate about and is you're having fun, you're loving it, chase that dream and follow that as far as it'll take you. Um, but honestly, the best piece of advice would be short arms, move your feet. I mean, things that you're in control of. I mean, not go out there and put him on his back and pin him. I mean, that's not good advice. I mean, keep your arms tight. Move your legs, stay in motion. I mean, whatever those pieces of advice that you are in control of, that you have dominion over, and it's like I can focus on moving my feet. And then the rest of the things just start to flow and start to happen. I'm not thinking, okay, I want to get in on his body, and you're just thinking, move my feet, get an angle, keep your arms short so you don't give up, offense by getting arm thrown or headlock. But the simpler the advice and the more succinct you can keep it. And the same thing, I try to live by that when I coach my guys. I don't want to give them a ton of information. I want to give them one or two things that they can focus on, because I already know they have the skills and the abilities and the talent and the desire to be successful. But if their minds, are thinking about things that they can't control, like winning the Olympic Games or winning a world title, that's one move your foot at a time, one match at a time. And if you're thinking about the big picture of, the standing on the podium or, getting your hand raised at the end of this bout, I think that's less important as something you can control, which is keep your arms short and move your feet. So it's probably the best piece of advice I've gotten, and I gave that advice to myself when I was on the mat, and I continue to give that advice to the guys I coach. Move your feet, get an angle, keep your arms short.
Yeah. So 2020 is behind us. We touched on it a little bit. A lot of good things coming up on the horizon for 2021, Olympics included. But what are you most looking forward to, in the Greco-Roman world in the next year?
Well, the games, obviously, but we're not going to talk about the games. So I'm qualifying the two weight classes that we need to get qualified, 77, 130, and we've got some depth at those two weights. I mean, we've got senior world medalist Adam Kuhn, who was a silver world medalist for us. We got Colton Schultz, who's right on his heels. I mean, those two guys are going to push each other this year and help each other get better. And then they're going to compete against one another and see who makes that team. and then they're gonna go out and get that weight qualified. And the same thing at 77. We got some incredible depth at 77. You know, Pat Smith and Perkins and Stefanovic. I mean, the weight is deep. And now it's get the guy on the team, whoever's going to make that team now, and start preparing him to go qualify that weight here early. And as soon as that team's made, it's like, catch your breath. We're going to go to Bulgaria and make sure we got a spot in Tokyo. 16-man bracket, man. It's tough, and I want to take a full team.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you had, your eye on Europeans a couple weeks ago, or excuse me, not the European.
Individual World
Yeah,
Cup.
yeah.
I know they changed the name. That tournament didn't exist, and they changed the name. I know what you were talking about.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking because I'm thinking Vlasov and Vlasov winning 77 and probably being a front runner at the European qualifier. But looking at that tournament and seeing some of the guys that we could see at the last chance qualifier, how tough are those brackets going to be?
That might be tougher than the Olympic Games, to be honest. Absolutely, to be honest. I mean, I like the system now, the way they've set it up. You get the top 5 from the worlds. You have your continentals. You got your last chance. Back in 2000, when I was qualifying the way, they had a wonky system where you gathered points, and there was a certain number of points based on how many people entered the tournament. And I went to 3 out of 4 of those events. Took a gold and beat a world champion in the finals of that tournament, took a silver in Uzbekistan, and neither one of those qualified me because the number of participants was lower than the one where I didn't place, where I was just coming back off an injury in Italy. And then I had to go beat a world champion at the Pan Am qualifier, where one guy got the spot. It's nice that we're going to get 2 out of each continent. So I do like the way it's being done now, much better than how it was done in the past. But we had 20. We had 20 spots. Now we are down to 16. The Olympic Games is just going to be, superstar after superstar. I mean, you're going to have to – every match is going to be a world medalist, Olympic medalist type of caliber of athlete that you're going to face. I mean, it's tough, but to get there and that final one chance world qualifier, that might be the toughest tournament of the year, and nobody's even watching or paying attention until you win that tournament, and then you go to the games. So I'm looking forward to all those opportunities this year.
Yeah. Another cool thing that's coming up, kind of recently announced, still sort of being formulated, but the Capital Cup is going to be late February. Looks like it's going to be kind of a dual Greco-Roman format. I think specifically for 67 kilograms. But we've seen a bunch of RTCs, freestyle based RTCs, hosting cards and events, and we've seen some Greco matches on them. Wrestling Underground had Provisor and
Perkins.
I know Provisor also wrestled, I think, Fritz Schurl on one of the Wisconsin cards. But what do you think of, a Greco-only type of event like this?
Well, there has to be a market for it, and there has to be a sponsor for it as well. And, right now in our country, freestyle is the king. I mean, people love the college wrestling. They're huge fans of that. And a lot of those college wrestlers matriculate into our freestyle national team. And the Greco-Roman, we try to get as many as we can and convert them over to Greco athletes. But I think we also have a good path of bringing guys straight into Greco-Roman, while they're still in high school age, while they're cadets, juniors. Getting them involved earlier is going to be important to that. What do I think of having these events? I think it'd be outstanding. Raise the profile of our sport and get guys on these cards. I love what they're doing out there on the East Coast with the Capital Cup, and they're moving our program forward. They're moving Greco-Roman forward, getting us exposure, getting guys matches, and getting the brand of Greco-Roman out there more often in front of people. So we're thrilled to see those happen. We're also looking at doing Club Cup in February. A lot of logistic problems, because it's in Washington State, up in Tacoma. So, but also it's on sovereign land and on an Indian casino. So, do we work with the state or do we say we're on sovereign land? I mean, there's just a lot of logistics to work out with. We're still battling through this whole COVID thing and finding our way around it. But I think just we need a bigger audience in the United States. I mean, and you go over to Europe and Greco-Roman is the classic style. It's the style that's the deepest worldwide. But in our country, it's the stepchild. And it's like we're kind of the black sheep. It's like, wow, that Greco thing they do. It's almost like jujitsu and Greco are over here, but when you start looking at combat sports as a totality and as a whole, I mean, every combat sport has its strengths and its weakness. And personally, I mean, I find folk style wrestling very boring. I mean, I don't enjoy watching it as far as an entertainment value. And I get that people do and they love it. And but I think I've talked to people that love it, and I'm like, what is it? And they're like, well, it's more of a soap opera because you're learning about what these coaches are doing and who their recruits are, and they're following this whole architecture of these programs. And they're not just the matches. They don't say it, but I think that without saying it, they pretty much admit that maybe the style of wrestling is not as exciting. It's certainly not as exciting as international, whether it's Greco or freestyle, which is all about scoring and big exposures, feet to back. And, in folk style, it's like the less you attack, the more you put yourself at risk. So that you don't see a ton of like really dynamic offense like you see in international. And I love international wrestling, freestyle and Greco. I think they're both super exciting. So yeah, that was kind of my answer on that. I don't know where I was going, but, I love to see more Greco-Roman in the United States and getting exposed. And then I think the more exposure, the more fans we're going to draw because it is a very exciting style. And we've got a lot of great storylines and good character development with our individual athletes and our program as a whole, but since it's not a style that's has American roots, it's not the beloved style in the United States.
Yeah, I think anybody that says Greco is boring hasn't watched much Greco or any Greco, because I think some people think that it's a 1-1 match on step out points or passivity points, and it's like when you actually watch it, not too many matches. Sure they happen occasionally, but that is not the archetype for a typical match right now.
Yeah, I think just speaking of the individual World Cup, I think there was 7 matches out of the whole tournament that went 1-1.
Yeah.
And UWW is already talking about, how to make an adjustment on that. They don't want the matches to end 1-1. Nobody does. And so we're even looking at some rule changes that are going to be tested here in Zagreb coming up in another week.
Cool. Very cool. Well, you've already touched on some of them. But, besides getting 6 guys ready for the Olympics and, fighting, maybe, again, not being embedded in our culture as much as some of the other styles, what are some of the most challenging aspects of being in your position?
I think that most of the recruiting in the United States would come from the college ranks. I mean, you've got your best athletes and wrestlers, whatever style that is, they're going into the college ranks. And then the more leg grabbing they do in college, the more they get away from the Greco-Roman and freestyle. So for us, the challenge is to start to develop more and more regional training centers that have components to both styles, both disciplines, freestyle, men's and women's, and as well as Greco. That was one of the first things that when I took this job in 2014 was I wanted to start getting more regional training centers involved, and we're starting to grow those. I mean, we have a real strong one out in Cornell, and that was our first one. We've held a world team trials there. And we're going to hold some more training camps for cadets and juniors out there. Illinois is strong. Utah Valley is strong. Arizona's got, always been strong with Sunkist, and they're a huge supporter of us. But the bigger clubs like the Sunkist and the New York ACs aren't. Those are big clubs that sponsor athletes, but where the training environments are is within the college environments. Illinois RTC is really stepping up and putting a lot of emphasis into their Greco as well as their freestyle. So the challenge is to convince these college coaches that it would help improve their programs. It can be a win-win situation for them. I mean, I loved it. The senior nationals this year, you saw Nebraska brought a bunch of guys, and they had a chance.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one. You're almost
and if you ask somebody in the United States what college wrestling program has produced more Greco-Roman world and Olympic medalists, what would that answer be? Mike, do you know?
No one.
Huh?
My guess would be no one. My guess would be Nebraska's number one.
Well, it is, because we were talking about Nebraska. But I mean, there was guys that came before me and Rulon, and then you had Brad and Justin, and I mean, they have a lot of history and tradition, but as of right now, the Nebraska Regional Training Center really does not focus on Greco a whole lot, and they've had guys that have had a lot of success at the cadet and junior level, and so when these athletes that have had success at juniors and cadets decide they want to do an NCAA route, and they want to follow that path and get those degrees, which we support and encourage. But you can also do that while you're going to UCCS here, which I got 7 athletes that are living in town, training Greco-Roman, all going to college, working on their degrees, and that's going to continue to grow. And so the challenge is to either get these incredible athletes that have moved on to the college system to get them out of the college system healthy and still motivated to want to go on and continue to compete and chase those Olympic and world dreams, or to bring guys into Greco-Roman and have them do their college while they're training Greco-Roman. And I mean, it's really cool to wrestle in the NCAA tournament. I mean, that's a big deal in the United States, but for me, wrestling on a world team or wrestling in Olympic Games seems like a much bigger deal. And so kind of shifting that mindset that you can still get a great education while you're training Greco, or, man, we want you back after you're done wrestling in college, and we want you wrestling Greco in the off season in college. So just continue to encourage these college coaches to help these athletes that have those skills to say, you know what, we're okay with you wrestling Greco-Roman. You're on the mat. Those skills are transferable to what we're doing. And sometimes even more so in certain positions. Some of the skills that Greco-Roman have are even more transferable, than even freestyle. But the optics of, hey, we're both grabbing legs. We got a little more bent over stance. Just seems to be an easier transition for a lot of college wrestlers, especially if you got a guy that went through, had really a lot of success as a junior and a cadet, and now he's wrestling college. And now they're like, well, man, you should be doing freestyle instead of Greco in the off season. That's the challenge. That's the challenge, honestly.
So what do you say to that, maybe high school junior or senior that definitely has a passion for Greco, isn't particularly passionate about folk style, but kind of thinks like, well, the way to do it is to go wrestle folk style in college. What do you say to those that are, Greco minded and Greco is their passion at that age?
Yeah, I mean, I was basically told that when I was coming out of high school was, to make an Olympic team, which this is not true, but basically it was like, to make an Olympic team, you got to go wrestle in college, and not just any college. You got to be at a D1, a big time program, and from there you can start your Olympic path. And and I followed that advice, and I mean, honestly, I I followed that advice eventually, but I wasn't a good enough wrestler coming out of high school to really get recruited by any major programs. I got recruited by a couple of colleges, but nothing big. So I decided to go to Clackamas, spend 2 years in junior college. Well, I was wrestling Greco in the off seasons and folk style during the season. And then I matriculated onto Nebraska and still had that opportunity. But even there, I won 2 national titles in freestyle before I ever won one in Greco and while I was in college, because that was the focus. That's what we were training in the room. I had to make the weight class, and the next day it was okay to wrestle Greco. We'll let you wrestle Greco, but I'm not going to be able to make that weight 2 days in a row. So I ended up going up a weight class both years there. But one year that qualified me to make a Pan Am team, winning the University Nationals, went on, beat Alexi Rodriguez in the Pan Am finals that year in freestyle. So I had fun. I love freestyle. It's fun. I enjoy it. I love the art of it. But Greco for me was a passion. And I was the year I decided I was literally going to go Greco or freestyle, I entered the tournament, the senior nationals in both styles. I lost to Dave Lee in the semifinals of freestyle. And no, I lost to Dave in the quarters of freestyle. I was up in the semis in Greco. I lost to Gordy Morgan in the semis in Greco, and I lost to Dave. And I realized that it was a shorter route back on the backside in Greco. Ended up placing high enough to qualify for the World Team Trials in Greco-Roman, because I dropped out of freestyle after losing to Dave Lee in the quarters, and ended up making a national team that year. And that was kind of my path. And I was like, okay, I know I'm pretty good at freestyle, but I really love doing Greco, and I was happy it worked out. But to answer your question on what do I say to these athletes is follow your dreams, man. What do you really enjoy? What are you passionate about? What way gets you up in the morning and it gets you excited? And if it's Greco-Roman wrestling, let's help you find a path, whether that's up in Northern Michigan or moving to Colorado Springs and enrolling in one of our junior colleges or our universities that are here in town, or, go to another college in like Illinois, but train Greco. You don't have to follow an NCAA path. If somebody was really passionate and they were asking me about that, and that's what I do tell guys, and that's why we are growing here, and that's why I've got 7 athletes that live in town that are all going to one college together, and they train together twice a day on the mats. But it's at the Olympic Training Center when that was open. Right now, we're training at a little club down the street until things open back up at the OTC, for health and safety reasons, and we understand that, and so we're adjusting. I think everybody's adjusting this year, but I would say be bold and courageous and follow a path that you really enjoy and you're passionate about.
All right. Last question I got for you today, Matt, and I'm guessing it'll be a tough one, but
Okay.
What is your best wrestling memory to date?
Phew, that is a tough one because, honestly, I would just say the relationships I built with all my teammates. Guys that I wrestled with at Clackamas Community College when I just got out of high school. One of my best friends was my teammate. I've lost a lot of friends that wrestled with me in high school. 3 guys in my class, 3 guys on my wrestling team have all passed away. The one guy out of that group of 4 that I was really tight with is, we're still really tight, even though he lives up in Puget Sound now and is homesteading up there. The guys that I wrestled with at Clackamas Community College, those are some of those guys are still my best friends today. Guys I wrestled with Nebraska and coaches there, Mark Cody, who was assistant coach, is one of my mentors now and still one of my dearest friends. And guys like Brad Varing that I've coached and Justin Reed, it's building those relationships with great people. And wrestling does have a lot of great people in it, but there are some really great people that choose to go into wrestling. And those are always my best memories. Just being with my boys after a hard camp or after a tournament, and just figuring out how we're gonna have fun in Europe or wherever we're at. We're not gonna sit in our room and get on the internet. Well, we didn't have internet then, so I guess that wasn't even an option. But we're not going to stay back in our room. We're going to go out and experience the culture and the food and the people of this part of the world that we're in, because we may never get a chance to get back to this part of the world again. And getting that opportunity to travel the world and meet with wrestlers from all over the world. I mean, I have international friends that I've had relationships with since I was an athlete, guys that I connected with overseas that are still friends to this day as well. So, I mean, it's those relationships. Definitely, there's no question between athletes and training partners and teammates and coaches and just all the people that are involved in the organization. I mean, that's really what the memories, like if I say those are the memories, it's not the matches. And I've had some great matches. If I had to pick one match, it'd be my semifinal win in 2001 against Alexander Menshnikov, 3-time world champion, and I got on top with 20 seconds left and lifted him for 5. I mean, those are cool memories, but it's the friendships and the relationships I built.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for coming on and sharing a little insight, Coach. Appreciate it.
Mike.
Always enjoy talking with you. Always hear some cool stuff and some cool stories. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
You bet, brother. We'll do it again.
All right. For Coach Matt Lindland, I'm Mike Willis. This has been another edition of Team USA Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in.